This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to our daily roundup. We have a packed show today covering everything from global automotive struggles to surprising new state programs and the shifting landscape of corporate benefits and media politics.
Toyota faces a £3 billion hit from war.
Trump sets a July deadline for EU trade deals.
Norway reopens gas fields to bolster European energy security.
Millions of Britons are stockpiling goods for major disruptions.
Companies are cutting employee benefits to fund AI investments.
Jeffrey Epstein's brother claims a new note is forged.
California launches a free diaper program for new parents.
Disney pushes back against political pressure on its programming.
First, the automotive industry.
Toyota has just issued a massive warning about the financial toll of the ongoing conflict in Iran, reporting a staggering £3 billion hit to its bottom line. As the world's largest carmaker, Toyota is often seen as a bellwether for the global economy, and these numbers are sobering. The company explained that it simply cannot absorb the soaring costs of parts and materials driven by the instability in the Middle East. Specifically, they saw a £1.9 billion increase in material costs alone, while lower sales in the region stripped away another substantial chunk of revenue. Because Toyota is the dominant brand in the Middle East, they are uniquely exposed to these disruptions. The closure of the Strait of Hormuz has created a logistical nightmare, trapping essential exports like aluminum, which Japanese manufacturers rely on heavily for vehicle production.
It is not just a temporary blip either, as Toyota expects its profits to decline for the third consecutive year through 2027. They are projecting a drop in operating income of more than 25% for the coming year. Chief Accounting Officer Takanori Azuma was quite blunt, stating that the company cannot fully offset the negative impact of the Middle East crisis. This ripple effect touches everything from the cost of paint and tires to basic transportation expenses. Interestingly, despite these headwinds, Toyota did see some growth in North America, and their focus on hybrid vehicles seems to be paying off. They sold nearly 10 million cars last year, with half of those being hybrids. While they are doubling their battery electric vehicle sales, they are still betting heavily on a slower transition away from fossil fuels compared to their competitors, which has actually helped them maintain a strong market position.
Next up,
Donald Trump has shifted his stance on the European Union trade deal, walking back a threat to immediately tear up the agreement. However, he has replaced that threat with a very specific ultimatum. The EU has until July 4th to fully ratify and implement the deal. This date is particularly symbolic, as it marks the 250th anniversary of American independence. Trump is demanding that the bloc reduce tariffs to zero on most American imports, warning that failure to do so will result in much higher tariffs on European goods, especially cars. He took to Truth Social to express his frustration, claiming he has been waiting patiently for the EU to fulfill their side of what he calls the largest trade deal ever. This follows intense talks in Brussels, where European officials have been trying to navigate the legal complexities of the agreement while facing domestic political pressure.
the situation is complicated by the fact that a U.S. trade court recently ruled Trump's latest 10% global tariffs illegal, though they remain in place during the appeal process. European leaders like Ursula von der Leyen have indicated that progress is being made, but the European Parliament has been hesitant, previously suspending ratification over Trump's comments about Greenland and other tariff threats. Now, there is a push from the European side to include steel in the deal, which is currently taxed at 50% for exports to the U.S. While German MEP Bernd Lang suggests a deal is close and that they will work expeditiously to meet the spirit of the agreement, the pressure of the July deadline looms large. It remains to be seen if the EU can move fast enough to satisfy the White House and avoid a renewed trade war that would further destabilize global markets.
Now let's shift to...
Norway is making a very clear statement about its role in the global energy market, with Energy Minister Terje Asland declaring that the country will develop, not dismantle, its offshore oil and gas activity. In a move that has sparked significant backlash from environmental groups, Norway has announced the reopening of 3 gas fields off its southern coast by 2028. These fields have been closed for nearly 30 years, but the government sees them as essential to filling the energy gap caused by the war in Ukraine and supply issues in the Middle East. This strategy aims to keep production levels stable through the end of the decade, maintaining an output of about 2 million barrels of oil daily. Norway already has nearly 100 offshore fields in operation, and they expect that number to grow even further as they explore new frontiers like the Barents Sea in the high north.
The minister emphasized that Norwegian production is vital for European energy security, arguing that the world will need oil and gas for decades to come. However, This stance is creating a deep political rift at home. The country's own environment agency has advised against these moves, and the Socialist Left Party has gone as far as calling the government's actions blatant greenwashing. They argue that reopening old fields puts vulnerable natural areas at risk and ignores expert environmental advice. Despite this, the state-owned energy giant Equinor is moving forward with massive efforts to maintain production. The sector generates incredible wealth for Norway, but the tension between economic security and climate commitments is becoming harder to ignore. As Norway positions itself as a reliable long-term supplier for Europe, the internal debate over the future of its continental shelf is only going to intensify as the decade progresses.
Moving on to...
A fascinating new survey has revealed that millions of people in Britain are now actively prepping for a major disruptive event. Whether it is the ongoing wars in the Middle East and Ukraine, the increasing frequency of extreme weather, or the threat of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, there is a growing sense that the world is becoming more chaotic. The data suggests that many Britons are no longer just worrying. They are taking practical steps like stockpiling tinned goods, keeping stashes of cash at home, and ensuring they have emergency supplies like battery-powered torches. Interestingly, this isn't just about societal collapse. Many are preparing for more mundane but still serious issues like bank IT failures or localized power outages. The UK's ATM network, Link, found that nearly half of those surveyed have already secured battery-powered items and food supplies in case normal services are interrupted.
The survey highlights a significant shift in public mindset regarding financial resilience. If card and mobile payments were to fail, over half of the respondents said they would head straight to an ATM, while a notable 15% already have a dedicated stash of banknotes and coins set aside for exactly that scenario. About 1 in 5 people have even invested in portable gas hobs or camping stoves, and 15% have kept an analog radio to stay informed if the internet goes down. While about a quarter of the population hasn't done anything to prepare, the trend towards self-sufficiency is clear. Experts have recently been advising the public to maintain an emergency store of food, and it seems a large portion of the population is taking that advice to heart. This reflects a broader anxiety about the fragility of modern systems and a desire to have some control in an unpredictable environment.
Next, in corporate news,
we are seeing a concerning new trend in the corporate world where employee benefits are being rolled back to fund investments in artificial intelligence. A prime example is T-Tech, a major customer experience technology and services firm, which has announced it is pausing its 401k matching for U.S. employees through the end of 2026. This is a significant move that directly impacts the long-term retirement savings of its workforce. The company explicitly stated that this decision is tied to their need to invest in AI tools, automation, and the necessary training to transition their workforce into this new technological era. It highlights a difficult trade-off that many companies are starting to make, prioritizing the massive capital expenditures required to stay competitive in the AI race over traditional employee compensation and benefits packages that have been standard for decades.
This rollback at T-Tech might just be the tip of the iceberg as more firms grapple with the high costs of AI implementation. While companies argue that these investments are necessary for long-term survival and will eventually lead to a more efficient and skilled workforce, the immediate cost is being borne by the employees. The pause in 401k matching is particularly striking because it is a multi-year commitment, suggesting that the financial pressure of the AI transition is expected to last for some time. As automation becomes more central to business operations, the traditional relationship between employers and employees is being reshaped. We may see more companies following suit, reallocating funds from human-centric benefits to technological infrastructure. This shift raises important questions about how the benefits of AI productivity will be shared and what the future of workplace security looks like in an increasingly automated economy.
Now to a development.
The mystery surrounding Jeffrey Epstein continues to deepen as his brother, Mark Epstein, has publicly challenged the legitimacy of a newly unsealed suicide note. The note, which surfaced this week through a series of legal proceedings involving a former cellmate, was purportedly written during a suicide attempt in July 2019, shortly before Epstein's death. Mark Epstein, who has long maintained that his brother was murdered, claims the note is a forgery. He argues that it would be incredibly easy for a professional to forge such a document. One of the key points of contention is a reference in the note to the show Little Rascals, specifically the line, "Watcha want me to do? Bust out cryin'," while Jeffrey Epstein had used similar phrases in emails before. His brother suggests that a forger could have easily copied this from previously released files to make the note seem authentic.
The note was unsealed by a judge after being held in a dispute over legal representation for Nicholas Tartaglione, the former police officer who was Epstein's cellmate at the time. Tartaglione claims Epstein left the note in a book when he was being transferred to a different cell. In the note, Epstein allegedly complained about being investigated for months and finding nothing, only to face 15-year-old charges. Mark Epstein noted that while the Little Rascals reference was something his brother might say, given their childhood in the 60s, its presence in the note doesn't prove it is real. The timing of the note's release, nearly 6 years after it was allegedly found, adds another layer of complexity to the ongoing scrutiny of Epstein's final days in a Manhattan jail. This latest development ensures that the questions surrounding his death will remain a subject of intense public and legal debate.
In other news,
California is launching a first-in-the-nation program designed to provide immediate relief to new parents by giving them a free stash of diapers at birth. Governor Gavin Newsom announced the Golden State Start initiative, which will provide families with 400 free diapers before they even leave the hospital. Launching this summer, the program will initially roll out in about 65 to 75 hospitals that primarily serve low-income families, covering roughly a quarter of all births in the state. The goal is to eventually expand this statewide. With the CDC recommending up to 12 diaper changes a day for newborns, this giveaway is expected to last about a month, helping to ease the significant financial burden that comes with a new child. California has already set aside over $7 million for the program, with plans to keep it funded through at least mid-2027.
this diaper program is part of a much broader push by the Newsom administration to tackle the high cost of raising a family in California. The state has partnered with the nonprofit Baby2Baby to manufacture the diapers, which will be distributed directly by hospital staff. Newsom highlighted this alongside other recent initiatives like free school meals, universal preschool, and expanded after-school programs. For many families, diapers are a major recurring expense that can add up to thousands of dollars over the first few years of a child's life. By providing this initial supply, the state hopes to give parents a bit of breathing room during those first critical weeks. It is a tangible example of how the state is trying to use its budget to directly impact the daily lives of its residents, focusing on early childhood support as a key pillar of its social policy.
Finally today,
Disney is taking a firmer stand against political pressure from the White House, marking a shift in how the entertainment giant handles conflict with Donald Trump. In a recent federal filing, Disney pushed back against attempts by the FCC to regulate which guests can appear on The View, calling such efforts a threat to free speech and completely unprecedented. While the dispute is technically with the FCC, the agency's head, Brendan Carr is a Trump appointee who often aligns closely with the president's views. This move by Disney follows another recent clash, where the White House called for the punishment of late-night host Jimmy Kimmel over jokes made about the Trump family. Despite the pressure and a sudden review of Disney's broadcast licenses, Kimmel has remained on the air, continuing his satirical commentary. This suggests a calculated decision by Disney's leadership to resist demands that interfere with their programming.
this new approach is a departure from earlier in Trump's second term, when Disney seemed more inclined to appease the administration. For instance, the company previously settled a defamation suit with a $15 million payout to Trump's planned presidential library and briefly took Kimmel off the air following complaints. However, public outcry and a change in leadership seem to have emboldened the company. New CEO Josh D'Amaro appears to be following the path set by his predecessor Bob Iger by politely but firmly refusing to give in to political demands. While Disney isn't looking for an all-out public brawl, their legal filings and refusal to censor their hosts send a clear message about their commitment to editorial independence. It is a delicate balancing act, as the company remains vulnerable to regulatory pressure, but for now, they are choosing to defend their content against outside interference.
That wraps up our briefing for today. Thank you for joining us for this look at the stories shaping our world. We will be back tomorrow with more focused updates.
Be sure to follow us for your daily briefing on the stories people follow most. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.